I almost threw it away. I came this close, thumb and forefinger, to dropping an old shoebox into the donation bin without opening it. It was dusty. It had no label. It had been sitting in the same corner of my garage for 11 years without me once thinking about it. But something made me stop. Maybe the weight of it was wrong. Too light to be important, too heavy to be nothing. I don't know. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table and stood there for a moment with the afternoon light coming through the window, my coffee already going cold. What was inside didn't change my life in any practical way. No money. No deed. No letter from a lawyer. Just ordinary things. Things I had completely forgotten I still had. And somehow, one by one, they undid me. I need to tell you about that afternoon. Because it changed the way I understand what the word rich actually means. I've been selling the house. Not for any sad reason, I want to be clear about that. The kids are grown and gone and the house is too large for one person, and I've been putting off this particular decision for 3 years. I finally stopped putting it off in March. Downsizing is a strange word. It sounds manageable and tidy, like folding a napkin. What it actually involves is standing in a garage on a Saturday morning looking at 31 years of accumulated life and making 100 small decisions before noon. Keep or donate. Keep or donate. Keep or donate. Most of it was easy. Warren's old golf clubs, donate. The bread maker we used twice, donate. 4 identical vases I have no memory of acquiring, donate, 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 and I don't even want to know where they came from. Then I got to the shoebox. No label. Dusty lid. Something about it made me pick it up instead of letting it go. I opened it at the kitchen table. On top, folded once, was a grocery list. Just a regular list on a regular piece of paper. Torn from a notepad we used to keep by the phone, the one with the little roosters printed along the border that I bought at a church sale in 1998. But the handwriting wasn't mine. It was Warren's. Milk. Bread. Those little crackers you like. Lemons, get the good ones. Vanilla ice cream, large, don't get the small, Margaret. He put my name in parentheses on a grocery list. As if I might argue. As if I needed to be addressed directly about ice cream. I sat down. I hadn't planned to sit down. The list was 6 items long and it was the most thing I'd touched in 6 years. I set it carefully on the table and looked into the box to see what else was in there. A library card. Mine, from the old branch on Whitmore Street that closed in 2011. I used to go every other Friday. That was my thing, Friday afternoon, library, an hour to myself while Warren took the kids to the hardware store, which was his thing. He liked hardware stores the way some people like museums. Slowly. With attention. I'd pick 3 books and a magazine and sit in the green chair near the window for 45 minutes before anyone needed me for anything. The librarian there, a woman named Helen with reading glasses she was always losing in her own hair, used to have something set aside for me. I thought of you when this came in, she'd say. She was right about 9 times out of 10. I haven't thought about Helen in years. I wonder if she'd be pleased that I think about her now. The library card had expired in 2009. I'd gotten a new one when they switched systems. But I'd kept the old one, apparently. Tucked it somewhere. And somewhere had turned out to be here, in this box, waiting to hand me back a Friday afternoon I'd forgotten I'd ever had. Next was a recipe card. My mother's handwriting this time. Smaller than Warren's, more careful, the letters slightly tilted to the right the way her generation wrote. Apple cake. The one she made every October without fail, the one that made the whole house smell like cinnamon and brown sugar and something deeper underneath, something I can only describe as the inside of that particular house, in that particular decade, with that particular woman moving around the kitchen in her good apron. She died in 2003. I have thought about that apple cake probably 100 times since. I never once thought to ask her for the recipe while she was alive. It seemed like she would always be there to make it, the way certain things always seem like they will simply continue. And here it was. On a 3x5 index card with a coffee stain in the corner that I'm almost certain was from her kitchen, not mine. 2 cups flour. 1 cup sugar. 3 eggs. 2 apples, peeled and cut small, she wrote. Not diced. Cut small. That was her. I don't know how this card got into that box. I don't remember putting it there. Which means at some point I found it somewhere and knew it was too important to lose and tucked it away and then promptly forgot where I'd tucked it. My mother would find that extremely predictable. A ribbon. Blue. Curling ribbon, the kind you run along the edge of scissors to make it spiral. Maybe 6 inches long. I held it up and had absolutely no idea. And then I did. It was from Daniel's 7th birthday. I know because his 7th birthday was the one where everything went sideways, the cake fell, the magician cancelled, 3 kids got into the good markers and decorated each other, and the only thing that went right was the ribbon on his present, which he walked around with all day tucked behind his ear like he'd won something. He'd worn it to dinner. He'd worn it to bed. I had to wait until he fell asleep to take it out of his hair. And apparently I kept it. A scrap of ribbon from a birthday that was a mess by every measurable standard. Kept in a box for 23 years. I think that's when I started to understand what kind of box this was. The photograph was face down. I turned it over slowly, the way you do when you're not sure what you'll find. It was Warren and me. Late 90s, judging by the way I'd done my hair. We were standing in the backyard of this very house, the garden behind us, the old fence that we replaced in 2004, the rose bush that was already getting out of hand. We weren't looking at the camera. We were looking at each other. Mid-laugh, both of us, over something neither of us can now remember and certainly didn't think to write down. Whoever took it, I don't even know who took it, they caught something real. Not a posed moment. Just a Tuesday evening in a backyard, 2 people who had built a life together and were in the middle of laughing about something small. I turned it over again. On the back, in Warren's handwriting, Margaret. Garden. Some year. He didn't remember what year either. We just knew it was worth keeping. If this is reminding you of something today, a box you haven't opened, a memory you'd almost let go of, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave your city and state in the comments. And if there's a small keepsake you could never bring yourself to throw away, I'd love to hear about it. A pair of gardening gloves. Small ones. Mine. Pale green, worn through at the right thumb the way all my gardening gloves eventually go because of how I hold the trowel. Warren used to say I held it like I had a grudge against the dirt, which was not inaccurate. These were from the first garden I planted after the kids were in school. Spring of 1994. I remember because it was the first time in years I'd had a weekday morning to myself, and I spent 3 of them on my knees in the side yard planting things that mostly didn't make it but some of which did, and all of which were mine. The gloves couldn't carry the feeling. But apparently they tried. At the bottom of the box was a piece of paper folded into quarters. My daughter Claire's handwriting. She must have been 8 or 9, the letters were the careful kind children make when they're trying to do it right. It said, "Dear Mommy, you are the best mom in the world and also in the universe. I love you the most, even more than Daddy, but please don't tell him. Love, Claire. P.S. I hid your reading glasses. Sorry. They are in the couch." I sat there for a long time. I remembered that day, not clearly, not in its details, but in its feeling. A regular Tuesday or Wednesday. Nothing special. Nothing that should have been memorable. Claire at the kitchen table with a crayon, working very hard. Me somewhere nearby, probably doing several things at once the way you always were back then. She handed me that note and I read it and laughed about the reading glasses and probably went straight back to whatever I was doing. I didn't know I was rich at that exact moment. I was just a mother on a Tuesday, a little tired, moving through the day. But I kept the note. I kept all of it, the ribbon and the recipe and the library card and the photograph. I kept these things without knowing why, which maybe means some part of me understood what I didn't have the time to stop and name. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time after the box was empty. The coffee was cold. The afternoon light had moved. The donation bin was still in the garage waiting for me to come back to it. I put the lid back on the box. Set it on the shelf in my bedroom where I can see it. The house is going on the market in May. There will be a smaller place somewhere, a good one, I'm sure of it. I'll take the kitchen table and the rose bush if I can, and the green chair from the living room and everything in this box. Everything else can go. I wasn't counting. I was never counting. And so I never knew how much I had. The wealthiest years of my life were the ordinary ones. I just didn't have a box to put them in yet. Thank you for sitting with me today. Take good care of yourself. I'll be right here next week.